Ichika is a weak, lonely boy who suddenly got transferred to an all-girls school because he accidentally activated an infinite Stratos device, which only girls are known to be capable of operating. On resuming school, he attracts all kinds of girls, who become excited to have a boy among them. On the first day of school, a teacher walks in and tells the class to introduce themselves. On reaching Ichika's turn, he embarrasses himself, and Chifuyu, his elder sister, rewards his stupidity with a resounding knock. He is shocked, wondering what his sister, whom he hadn't seen in a while, is doing there, and she introduces herself as the homeroom teacher who teaches them how to pilot the infinite Stratos, also called the IS. Upon hearing this, the whole class becomes excited to have the legendary Chifuyu, Japan's representative for the first ever is pilot competition, teach them, but Ichika is still in shock. They are also surprised to know that Ichika is her younger brother. The only boy who can operate in IS. After the class, his ugly childhood friend Hoki approaches and asks them to go to a sus place to talk. But on getting to the rooftop, she goes mute, not knowing what to say to a friend she hasn't seen for 6 years. In the next class, Ichika finds it difficult to understand what they are being taught because he is a dummy, and his sister asks him if he had read the reference book before enrollment. But it happens that he had carelessly misplaced it, so she smacks his ugly head and asks him to get it and memorize it in a week. Later, an ugly blonde named Cecilia meets him and begins bragging about her useless achievement in a bid to intimidate him. But Ichika is not impressed as he tells her about his feats too, shocking her. After school that day, he heads to his dorm and is shocked to see Hoki in a towel. She immediately grabs her wooden sword to attack him for intruding. To save himself, he quickly runs out of the room, only to find other girls advertising their plots to him. So he heads back inside, and Hoki gives him rules to abide by as a roommate. She tries to hit him again, but he grabs a wooden sword too. However, he finds her plot armor on it, which she quickly takes from him. He tells her it's cute, and she slaps him immediately. The next day in class, Chifuyu announces that they will be electing a class representative for the upcoming interclass tournament, and asks them to nominate volunteers. 2 girls nominate Ichika, but Cecilia decides to advocate for feminism by saying that a female should be made the representative. However, Ichika tells her she's an idiot, and she challenges him to a duel, to which he agrees. Then, Chifuyu declares that they should prepare to fight in a week. She tells Ichika that it would take time to make his IS suit, as the school doesn't have a spare one, and they would have to make him a personal one, surprising his classmates as they wonder why he has access to a personal suit in his first year. Cecilia appears with her bragging again, telling Ichika that she also has a personal suit since she is the cadet representative from England. He is told that there are only 467 of those in the world whose cores were built by Dr. Tabana, Hoki's elder sister. Upon realizing that this is Hoki's sister, the class is shocked and asks Hoki where her sister, whom the government has been searching for, is, but Hoki is an angry bird as she takes it a little personal and replies that they shouldn't ask her the fuck about her sister, leaving Ichika wondering if she was on bad terms with her elder sister. The class continues, but Ichika doesn't understand a thing, and later, after the class, he asks Hoki to lunch, but she refuses, acting grumpy. However, he doesn't mind her attitude and drags her along. While they eat, he asks her to teach him about IS, as it already seems like he will lose to Cecilia. When she delays in her response, a pretty ugly girl approaches them and volunteers to teach him, but Hoki quickly snorts that she would teach him. And while the girl argues that she would be a better teacher since she is a third-year student, Hoki replies that she is Dr. Tabana's sister, shocking her. Following this, she begins training Ichika and discovers that he is very weak compared to how she used to know him. She then tells him that IS is not his issue and that she will coach him for 3 hours after school, every day from now on. After a few days, Ichika complains to his tutor that she has been using the wrong syllabus as she hasn't even taught him what he met her for. But she tells him it's because his suit is not yet ready. Meanwhile, by the time his suit is ready, it's already time for the duel, and he has to use it without rehearsal. He soon mounts his new suit, Byakuseki, and heads out to the arena for the duel. At the start of the fight, Cecilia comes off with her bragging as usual and fires her laser cannon at him, sending him to the ground. She continues to do this, and while he barely dodges them, he summons his weapon and charges at her, but she intensifies her fire. He skillfully dodges all her attacks, shocking her and surprising the audience. However, Chifuyu isn't feeling him and says he is getting carried away already, judging from the fact that he has been opening and closing his left hand for a while, a habit that usually precedes his display of stupidity. He continues dodging Cecilia's shots, and as he moves closer to her, she fires 2 missiles at him, which pursue him until he is hit, shocking everyone. However, Ichika's suit suddenly transforms, and he realizes that his weapon, Yukihira, is the same one his sister once used. He activates it and makes some unnecessary blabbing before charging at her, but she quickly sends more missiles at him. He dodges them and almost strikes her, but his shield energy suddenly hits zero, ending the fight and making Cecilia the winner. Wondering why he lost, he asks Chifuyu about it, and she tells him it's because he used the barrier nullification attack, which usually inflicts damage on the enemy in exchange for the shield energy. Yamada then hands him a large manual to read to operate his new suit properly, and on seeing its size, he realizes that he is really gonna fail at school. Later that day, while Cecilia takes a shower, she feels unsatisfied even after her victory and wonders why. During the practical session the next day at school, Cecilia and Ichika are told to demonstrate before their ignorant classmates, but Ichika is still lacking in his abilities as he is too slow. So Cecilia offers to teach him how to ride faster. After classes, on the other hand, Chifuyu orders them to demonstrate a nosedive landing, and Cecilia successfully does hers, but Ichika prefers to hug the ground instead. Concerned, Cecilia quickly goes to meet him to see if he is fine, but Hoki gets jealous and interrupts, leaving Ichika wondering why they are against each other. Following that, Cecilia steps down, and Ichika is made the class representative, surprising him. In the next class, the students discuss a new transfer student in class from China, and while they claim that she would be a piece of cake to Class 1 since she most likely doesn't have a personal suit, she appears and declares she is a cated representative who's also got a personal suit. On seeing her, Ichika is surprised to discover it is Rin, his childhood friend, and they both get along quickly, leaving the other classmates jealous. As they both discuss, Rin tells him she was surprised to see on the news that he activated an IS, and she asks him how he did it. He tells her it was unplanned, explaining that on the day of the entrance exam into the school, he lost his way while trying to look for the venue and accidentally entered a room where an IS was. He moved closer and touched it only to shockingly activate it, giving him admission into the school. Cecilia and Hoki approach them in jealousy, demanding an explanation from Ichika regarding the hot girl he is talking to, but he tells them she's just a friend. The bell rings and they go for their personal practice session. Hoki activates her suit and prepares to fight Ichika in an intensive training session, but Cecilia doesn't want to miss out, so she activates hers too and joins in a threesome. After a quick session of plot development, Ichika becomes exhausted and begins to gasp for breath, so Cecilia takes her leave, but Hoki tells him they should return to their room for more. However, he tells her he will pass on this one. Later he meets Rin, who, while they talk, discovers that he shares a room with Hoki, making her jealous. However, he tells her Hoki is too unattractive to raise his magnum. Rin decides to meet Hoki and requests to exchange rooms with her, annoying the angry bird, who immediately grabs a wooden sword and strikes her, but Rin quickly blocks it by activating her IS. She reminds Ichika about the promise they made to each other when they were young, but she didn't know that he was too dumb to understand it. He tells her to explain it, but she doesn't, and states that in the coming competition, whoever loses will do whatever the winner wants. Then he states that he will win and have her explain what her promise meant. Following this, both are paired up for the first match of the tournament, and on D-Day, the match begins with both charging at each other in full force. Rin's attacks are so intense that Ichika can barely keep up. On realizing that he would be worn at this rate, he starts running from her to create some distance between them, but Rin fires at him at full throttle, crashing him to the ground. He returns to his feet and continues dodging Rin's attacks. While doing so, he remembers his little briefing on using the eyes and wonders if he can use the barrier nullification skill here, so he gets into action, leaving Yamada wondering what he is planning to do. On the other hand, Chifuyu replies that he must be trying to use Ignition Boost, a surprise attack where one accelerates to top speed in a flash to approach the enemy. Meanwhile, Ichika continues running from Rin, and after a while, he suddenly charges at her at full speed, but before he can hit her, a laser beam suddenly hits the arena, causing an explosion. Upon realizing that something has just intruded the arena's protective shield, Chifuyu orders that they suspend the match and everyone evacuate immediately. While this is going on, Rin tells Ichika to escape to the pit while she buys him time since he is just a weak-ass dude, but he refuses, saying he can't leave a girl behind. Another laser beam is shot at Rin while she is distracted, but Ichika quickly saves her. The unidentified flying object becomes more aggressive and opens a massive fire on them, but they manage to dodge the attacks. Then, Rin tells Ichika to plunge in while she covers for him, to which he agrees, but the idiot obviously skipped firearm training class as he successfully missed his target 4 times. Meanwhile, Yamada tells them to evacuate as soon as possible. But that wouldn't be possible as the protection shield has been overridden by the unidentified and set to the highest level, preventing any evacuation and reinforcement. At this moment, Ichika discovers he can only use barrier nullification one last time since his energy shield is now very low. After a while, he suddenly realizes that the movement of the unidentified is too mechanical, as it seems to only attack them at certain conditions, and he suggests it might be unmanned, shocking Rin. He then decides to go all out using Rei Rakubakuya, his weapon's power, which he isn't allowed to use in school due to its overwhelmingness. However, Rin doesn't give a shit about his weapon, telling him there's no point since he will still miss.
Emotional damage!
He then tells her to shoot her cannons towards him at full power when he makes the signal. However, while they talk, Hoki appears on the sideline to motivate Ichika, but this only causes the unidentified to notice her and attempt an attack. On noticing this, Ichika quickly tells Rin to fire her cannons at him, which he then uses to boost his shield energy and launch an attack at the unknown enemy. But he misses the again, as the dodges and lands a punch in return, crashing him to the ground. Then, it attempts to ice him, but Cecilia comes to his rescue as she suddenly fires at the unidentified with her laser weapons, destroying it. However, while they think they've won, the IS arm suddenly gets activated and blasts at Ichika. This causes him to be taken to the infirmary. Meanwhile, Yamada and Shifuyu investigate the unidentified and discover that it is powered by an unregistered core, not among the 467 cores in the world, which makes them wonder what's happening. Following this, Yamada appears in room 1025 and tells Hoki it's time to move as a new room has been prepared already. She tries to reject it, but when the clueless idiot tells her she can move and shouldn't worry about him, she gets angry and packs immediately. A few moments later, she returns to tell him that he must date her if she wins at the upcoming all-class tournament. Meanwhile, some busybodies were eavesdropping and began to spread the rumors around the school. The next day, a new transfer student, Charles, a cadet representative from France, is introduced, and everyone is surprised to have another boy in class. Chifu announces that they will be having an training together with Class 2, and she tells Ichika and Charles to go and change first since they are both boys. Ichika grabs his new friend and runs to the locker room immediately, but the other girls start to gather around to admire the new boy. On reaching the locker room, Ichika pulls on his plot armor to change his clothes, but Charles gets embarrassed and quickly turns away, surprising him. The training soon begins and Cecilia and Rain are told to do the demonstration, but they are reluctant. However, their countenance changes when Shifuyu tells them this is their chance to appeal to Ichika. Shifuyu introduces who they will be up against, and Yamada crashes into Ichika, putting them in an awkward position to develop plot. The friendly duel begins, and not long after the two girls finish bragging, Yamada defeats them as easily as it is to drink water. The class is divided into groups for the training, and while Ichika teaches his group by mounting them on the suit, one by one, Hoki intercepts for her turn. But she tells him she can't reach the cockpit when it's raised, so Ichika activates his suit and helps her. She asks him to have lunch with her later, and he agrees, but he is an idiot as he brings his friends along. The next day, an ugly one-eyed girl from Germany is introduced as a new transfer student, and she calls her name Laura while referring to Chifu as drillmaster, making Ichika realize that this used to be his sister's name when she was in Germany. As she walks to her, she gives Ichika a remarkable slap, shocking everyone as she says she will never acknowledge that he is Chifu's younger brother. The next day, while the other students practice choreography, Hoki, Rin, and Cecilia are trying to train Ichika at once, but he can't understand anything with his nut-sized brain. Charles appears in his suit and tells Ichika he would like to battle Byakushiki, which he agrees to immediately. However, as soon as they begin fighting, Charles finishes him off very quickly by firing his gun at him until his shield energy is exhausted. After the short fight, Charles explains some things about his suit to him, and then gives Ichika his rifle to practice with. While at this, Laura suddenly appears and challenges Ichika to a fight, but he declines, saying it can wait till the upcoming interclass league match. However, she suddenly launches an attack, but Charles quickly intercepts and blocks it, preparing to fire at her too. A teacher intervenes and Laura retreats immediately while the other girls ask what is between him and her. Following this, Charles meets Ichika in the locker room and immediately tries to excuse himself. But Ichika confronts him that he's always trying to avoid changing with him. He tries to hold him, but he becomes embarrassed and runs off, surprising him. A while later, on his way to the dorm, he overhears Laura talking with Chifu, begging her to stop wasting her time here at the academy and return to Germany to instruct her and her colleagues again. Chifu tells her to shut the f*** up and dismisses her immediately. She then calls Ichika from his hiding and tells him he's an idiot for eavesdropping when he ought to be training. He questions her about what Laura said concerning not acknowledging him as her brother, asking if it's because he was the reason she couldn't win the tournament the second time, but she tells him it's all in the past already and leaves. It was the final of the second international fighting tournament, and Ichika was mysteriously kidnapped and imprisoned. When his sister heard about this, she immediately forfeited the tournament and went to rescue him. This caused an uproar, and being indebted to the German military who had helped her in locating him, she had to stay back in Germany for a year to train there as division. Ichika returns to his dorm and meets Charles having a shower. He grabs a new body wash to give to him as a replacement for the exhausted one, but he is shocked when he sees his male friend with medium-sized balloons. He returns to the room in shock, and when Charles later comes out of the bathroom, they both feel awkward. He asks her why she pretended to be a male, and she explains that her father ordered her to. She is not the real child of her father, and he didn't take her in until 2 years ago, when they began to perform tests on her at his company, as soon as they discovered she had highest aptitude. The company went through a crisis not long after, as they became stuck at the second generation as model when other developers have now upgraded to the third generation models. Ichika wonders what this has to do with her pretending to be a male, and she tells him it was so she could move closer to him and obtain information on him and his suit. He asks her what she will do now, and she tells him that she will have to return to her country and, at worst, be locked in prison. On hearing this, he tells her to stay in the academy, reading out the regulation that says that students belong to no country, organization, or group during the space of their 3 years of study at the academy. Cecilia knocks on the door, and Charles quickly pretends to be sick to prevent being caught, and Cecilia takes him away with her for dinner. Following this, Laura reveals the golden eye while planning to eliminate Ichika, since she believes he is the hindrance to his sister. The next day at school, the rumor further spreads that the winner of the upcoming competition will be going out with Ichika, and Hoki wonders how everyone got to know what she had told Ichika. The two talkative meet again, and as they brag to each other about who is stronger, they challenge themselves to a fight. While they prepare to launch attacks at each other, Laura interrupts them, and they soon engage in a verbal exchange until it escalates into a fight. Upon hearing about this, Ichika and Charles immediately come to the arena to see what's happening. The fight continues with Rin firing her impact cannons at Laura, but she blocks it using her suit's inertial stopper, shocking Ichika. She launches other attacks, but Laura just seems to have a perfect counter to all her attacks. Laura suddenly shoots her grapple guns at Rin and grabs her with them, but Cecilia sends a myriad of attacks with her laser weapons before shooting missiles at her. However, Laura dodges all, and as she flees the missiles, she falls into Cecilia's supposed trap zone, who then fires another missile, but Laura also responds with a blast from her cannons, causing a major explosion. Meanwhile, Laura also swings Rin, who she had captured earlier at Cecilia, crashing them into each other. She stands over and prepares to blast another fire from her cannon, but Cecilia reflexively fires her at such a short range. However, while they thought they must have dealt some real damage, Laura appears unscathed, shocking them. She then grabs them with her ropes and starts beating their ass up, not minding the risk to their lives. Seeing this, Ichika goes Hulk mode and breaks through the protective barrier into the arena to save his friends. He lunges toward Laura, but she immediately stops him with her inertial stopper and attempts to blast him. But Charles suddenly begins firing at her, allowing Ichika to escape with the two girls. Laura grabs Charles and starts to draw her closer, intending to attack her, but Chifu suddenly appears and blocks it. She then dismisses all of them, forbidding any private matches until the tournament. After this, Rin and Cecilia are taken to the infirmary, and while Ichika and Charles take care of them, some students suddenly barge in to show them the new update regarding the interclass tournament, stating that students will now be required to participate in pairs and not individually. Moreover, those who can't form a pair will be assigned to a pair at random. All the girls ask him to be their partner, but he refuses and tells them he will pair up with Charles instead. On the other hand, Cecilia and Rin also ask to be his partners, but Yamada arrives and tells them they won't be able to participate in the competition because of the damage to their suits. The next day, as they prepare for the tournament, the fixtures are released along with the random pairing of those who couldn't form a pair. Ichika and Charles shockingly discover that their first opponents are Laura and Hoki. The match soon begins with Ichika charging head-on at Laura, but she blocks him with her inertial stopper, and while she prepares to blast him, thinking he just made a very dumb move by attacking her head-on, Charles suddenly appears behind him and starts firing at her. She immediately flees and Hoki intercepts by blocking Charles' attacks. Then Hoki charges at Charles, but she and Ichika move in perfect unison as Ichika comes from behind her and blocks the attack while she prepares to blast Hoki with her cannons. However, Laura pulls a move right out of Mortal Kombat. Come over here, crashing Hoki to the ground behind her while she continues fighting Ichika. Hoki tries to engage again, but Charles blocks her and starts firing at her until she crushes her suit, making her unable to continue. Charles then rejoins Ichika in fighting Laura and lunges toward her, but Laura blocks her with her inertial stopper. However, this was all part of the plan in a bid to distract Laura. Ichika suddenly attacks from above, catching her unawares, but she manages to dodge it. He dashes at her again, and while she blocks him with the inertial stopper again, Charles blasts her with her cannon. As the fight goes on, Ichika gets an opening and attempts to land an attack, but his shield energy suddenly gets exhausted, turning off his suit. Laura immediately knocks him to the ground, but Charles gets into action as she opens fire at her using ignition boost. Laura is surprised but prepares to unleash her attacks again. However, Ichika shoots her from the back with his rifle. This angers her, and she shoots her grapnel gun at him, but Charles uses the opportunity to draw her close and breaks her shield with shield pierce. She then dashes at her and begins hitting her. Then Laura begins to think of how she can't afford to lose as she remembers all the training she went through while she grew. She used to be at the highest level of combat abilities until the advent of IAS. Then, a nanomachine was immediately implanted into her eye to enhance compatibility. However, her body didn't completely adapt to it, and she was labeled as a failure. But this changed when Chifu became her instructor, allowing her to rise to the top again. She then meets her to ask why she is so strong, and Chifu excitedly replies that she has a brother. Since then, Laura had become determined to ice the guy who took her master away from her. Back to the present, she suddenly activates the nanomachine in her eyes and begins to transform into something mysterious, with everyone wondering what's happening. The alert condition is immediately raised to level, and the tournament is suspended immediately as everyone is told to evacuate the arena. Ichika notices that the monster is exactly like his sister and prepares to fight her, but Laura knocks him to the ground in one hit, deactivating his suit immediately. Ichika, seeing that she is imitating Chifu, becomes angry and foolishly attempts to attack in his ordinary form, but Hoki stops him. He insists on fighting anyway, but she asks him what his weak, ugly can do now that his suit is deactivated. However, Charles immediately offers to recharge his suit for him using the open core bypass of her own suit. After powering his suit for a while, Ichika activates Byakashiki in limited part mode and then activates Rei Raku Byakuya before unleashing a powerful slash, which immediately defeats the monster, releasing Laura. She wakes up in the infirmary and sees Chifu, who asks her if she knows about the Valkyrie Tray system, a prohibited system which was loaded on her eyes and becomes activated only when certain conditions are in place. Following this, while Ichika and Charles eat together, he sees Hoki and goes to tell her he will have a date with her as they promised, making her excited. Yamada comes to tell them that they have been rewarded with a free shower at the men's public bath for their efforts back at the arena. At the bath, while Ichika enjoys himself, Charles joins him for a shower plot, and as they get cultured, she tells him she has now decided to reveal her identity as a girl. The next morning, Yamada introduces her again to the class, but as Charlotte and the whole class begin to gossip about the bath she and Ichika had together the previous night, Rin gets annoyed and immediately breaks into the class to ice the perverted idiot, but Laura saves him and then kisses him, shocking the whole class. A few nights later, Dr. Tabana, Hoki's sister, suddenly calls her, and while Hoki attempts to hang up, her sister tells her she has made a personal suit for her, an exclusive model with top-notch specs called Akatsubaki. Hoki is surprised, as she had always wanted a personal suit. The following morning, Ichika wakes up and finds Laura in her creation state beside him. He is shocked and wonders how she got there, but she tells him that since they are now a couple, they can now engage in baby-making combats. Ichika asks who taught her this nonsense, and she immediately grapples him for another combat round. Hoki enters the room to call him for their training, but she shockingly discovers that he is already undergoing a more pleasurable kind of training. Some days later, the whole class visited the beach to have fun after many boring days at school. Chifyu sees Hoki standing alone in an isolated place, separated from the others, and she approaches her to ask what's up, to which she replies that she is thinking about her sister. On hearing this, Chifyu tells her she contacted her a few days back and discovered she wasn't involved in the incident with Laura's BT system. She also adds that Tabane might show up the next day. Later that night, while they have dinner, Cecilia finds it difficult to sit properly, being a foreigner, and Ichika offers to feed her. She excitedly jumps at the offer, and he carefully puts his large meat in her mouth. This causes an uproar in the room, and Chifyu comes to caution them, warning Ichika to stop causing a ruckus. After she leaves, Ichika tells Cecilia he will have to stop here, but also whispers to her that she can come to his room later for a little compensation. Thinking it's about to go down, she wears nice lingerie under her sauna attire and heads to his room, but meets her rivals by the entrance, listening in on what he is doing with his sister in the room. However, they are soon exposed as the door suddenly falls. Chifyu wonders what they were doing, but they are embarrassed to tell her what was in their dirty minds. She reveals that her brother is very good at massaging and suggests that they experience it too. To give them a taste of his skill, he calls up Cecilia first and reveals that this was why he invited her over. He soon begins the massage plot, with Cecilia almost making happy noises. But Chifyu opens her clothes and discovers that she came prepared for something more, embarrassing her. The next morning, Ichika wakes up and sees Hoki staring at a post. He asks her about it, but she snubs him, so he decides to pull it to find out what's there. Then, a large ship suddenly hits the ground, and Tabane appears. Later, while Ichika and the girls meet Chifyu, Tabane makes a ridiculous entrance, acting like an idiot, and when the girls realize that this is the renowned Dr. Tabane, they are shocked, wondering if this is the idiot they have always admired. Another ship hits the ground where they are, and Hoki's new suit, Akatsubaki, a fourth-generation Itis, is unveiled, surprising everyone. Hoki mounts it and begins to test its abilities. While she does this, Yamada appears with a report on a special mission, requesting that they start countermeasures immediately. 2 hours earlier, an American-Israeli joint developed an unmanned third-generation is called Silverio Gospel, which had gone out of control and escaped from their airspace while under surveillance. They plan how to take down the rogue is, but since it's traveling at supersonic speeds, they only have one shot at it, so they have to destroy it with an IS that can defeat it in one blow, which only brings them to one person who is capable of doing that, Ichika. Now the problem is how they will get him close enough to attack it. To this, Laura suggests that it would require an IS that can move at a high speed. However, Tabanet appears and tells them she's got a better plan, introducing Hoki's new suit as the solution. She says this occurrence reminds her of the White Knight incident, which goes back in time to 10 years ago. 1 month after Tabanet announced the IS, various countries' missiles were hacked and a total of 2341 missiles were launched at Japan. In the midst of the world's confusion, an unknown woman in a white IS appeared, destroyed all the missiles and disappeared as nothing happened. Back to the present, Hoki and Ichika are assigned to handle the mission, which will begin in 30 minutes. They soon activate their suits and prepare to set out on the mission. Ichika observes that Hoki is too excited and asks if it's because she just got a personal IS, but she denies it and tells him she is just her usual self. Chifyu calls in and briefs them on the mission again, and when Hoki talks, they also perceive she seems excited. So Chifyu calls Ichika on a private channel and tells him to support Hoki whenever the need arises, as she seems too pumped up and might make some sort of blunder during the mission. The mission begins as Ichika mounts on Hoki and rides her to climax. Her suit moves at insane speed, and they soon see Silverio Gospel. Hoki increases acceleration towards it while Ichika prepares to land a strike, but the IS suddenly changes course and dodges his attack. It begins to fire cannons at them, so they both decide to split up and attack it from the sides, but it moves extremely fast. Hoki fires her metallic weapons and suddenly clings to it, creating an opportunity for Ichika to attack, but he deliberately misses the opportunity upon noticing the ship on the sea, trying to prevent them from being hit. However, Hoki dismisses them as criminals and tells Ichika to ignore them, but he objects, telling her he can't leave them to die. Hoki insists that they ignore the criminals, but he suddenly takes her into another dimension and tells her not to say something like that, as she shouldn't completely look down on weak people now that she has gained power. She begins to feel terrible and becomes distracted, making her vulnerable to the enemy's attack, but Ichika quickly flies in to save her, getting hit instead and crashing into the sea. He falls into a coma and is taken to the infirmary for treatment. However, his sister can't bear to check him up in this state, since she feels terrible too. Hoki stays with him in the ward, still feeling terrible from what happened during the fight, and Yamada comes to tell her to take a break so she can rest. After she leaves, she starts running at the beach until she becomes exhausted, and she recalls her experience with Ichika since they were young. While she thinks about this, Rin appears and blames her for being the reason why Ichika is like that, just to get her agitated. She tells her to stop being depressed already and rather be determined to fight. But Hoki replies that she isn't going to use Inez anymore, which upon hearing prompts Rin to slap her. Hoki becomes motivated to fight, and suddenly she sees her other friends gathered, prepared to go and defeat Silverio Gospel. Laura reveals its location, and they all prepare to head there immediately. However, Hoki tells them it's against the orders, but Rin replies that they do not give a f*** about the orders. They soon arrive at Silverio's location, and upon spotting it, Laura fires a shot from her mighty cannon, which immediately alerts Yamada and Chifu back at the meeting room, making them realize that some girls have gone against orders. On the other hand, Silverio resists the first attack, and they continue the artillery fire, but it swiftly dodges all without getting hit. While the battle goes on, Ichika sees himself in a solitary and calm place and sees a strange lady dressed in white, whom he quickly approaches. The environment suddenly transforms, and Inez begins to ask him if he desires power, but he just silently watches. Meanwhile, during the battle, Hoki has a collision with Silverio and manages to break its arm off, causing it to crash into the sea. However, a strong tsunami occurs as Silverio suddenly emerges from the sea in a more powerful form, shocking them. Ichika finally gives a positive answer, and Inez asks him why he wants power, to which he replies that he wants to protect his companions who fight alongside him from the evil in the world. Silverio soon starts to deal damage to them one by one, and while Hoki lies in her misery, hoping to see Ichika again, he suddenly appears before her, calling her name. She becomes shocked and starts to cry. Then, Ichika wishes her a happy birthday, today being her birthday, and gives her a new ribbon before flying off to face Silverio. Chifuyu immediately receives a report that Ichika is no longer in the infirmary, and as Yamada observes him on her screen, she discovers that Byakushiki has evolved into its more powerful second form, Setsuna. As the battle continues with several exchanges between them, Hoki becomes excited to be fighting alongside Ichika, and as she thinks of this, her suit suddenly activates Kenrin Bucho, which instantly auto-recharges it, completely restoring her shield energy to maximum capacity. Ichika continues to face Silverio, and his shield energy almost gets exhausted as he takes several hits. However, Hoki appears and grabs his hand, which suddenly recharges his shield energy to the maximum. Then they all deliver joint attacks at Silverio, who skillfully dodges, all while attacking them at the same time. It delivers a myriad of attacks at Rin, but Charlotte quickly saves her. Then Ichika suddenly attacks it from its blind spot and crashes it into the seashore, exerting pressure until its shield energy becomes exhausted, thus finally defeating it. They all return to Chifuyu, who scolds them for breaking the orders but also praises them for doing well. Later that night, she meets Tabane and reveals that she is aware that Tabane has been the mastermind genius behind all that has happened, from intelligently guiding Ichika into a room containing an IS and allowing it to move at a specific time that made it seem like he could operate it, to perfectly causing an unknown is to go berserk. Just at the same time, Hoki got a new suit so she can make a grand debut. Upon realizing that she has been exposed, Tabane disappears immediately. Meanwhile, Ichika meets Hoki in a sus place, and while they try to develop plot, the other girls interrupt them and immediately start to fire at them in envy. This is the end of this recap. If you have reached this far, let's confuse the fake fans by commenting, "Rip Ichika." Also, give this video a like, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell. See you on the next one.